You're about to hear 3 deeply unsettling stories that sound like they could have happened to anyone, and maybe they already have. These aren't your typical ghost tales or urban legends. These are personal accounts that will make you question what's hiding in the quiet moments of your life. Keep the lights on. Trust your instincts. And whatever you do, don't answer when it whispers your name. If you enjoy scary true stories like these, help this channel grow by subscribing and turning on notifications. Every subscription helps us bring you more real horror stories that keep you up at night. Thank you for your support. I don't talk about this much, not because I've forgotten it. How could I? But because it still unsettles me to my core. And I've learned that most people don't want to believe things like this can happen, especially in their own homes. I was 9 years old when this happened. My little sister Emma was 7. We grew up in a 2-story house in a quiet tree-lined neighborhood in upstate New York. It was the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked during the day, and neighbors waved from their porches. Our house was old, built in the 1920s, with creaky stairs and drafty windows, but my parents loved its charm. To us kids, it was just home. Emma and I shared a room upstairs, across the hall from the small guest room that barely fit a bed and a dresser. Our parents' room was downstairs, next to the kitchen. They always said it gave them peace and quiet, but I think they just liked having their own space. That summer, Emma and I were inseparable. We stayed up whispering to each other, reading books under the covers, and playing with our walkie-talkies when we were supposed to be asleep. But one night changed all of that, and to this day, neither of us can talk about it without getting visibly shaken. It started with the scratching. I woke up in the middle of the night to a faint scratching sound. At first I thought it was just a tree branch against the window. That happened sometimes when the wind picked up, but then I realized the scratching wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the floor, from under our bed. I froze, holding my breath, straining to listen. Emma stirred beside me, rubbing her eyes. She must have heard it too, because she sat up slowly and looked at me, wide-eyed. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. I nodded. Neither of us moved. The scratching grew louder, more deliberate, like fingernails dragging across the hardwood floor. Then it stopped. We stayed like that for what felt like an hour, barely breathing. Eventually I convinced myself it had been a mouse or something small. I whispered that it was probably nothing, just the house making noises, like Mom always said. Emma didn't look convinced, but she lay back down and pulled the covers over her head. I did the same, but that wasn't the end of it. A few nights later, it happened again. This time there was no scratching. It was whispering, not from under the bed, but from the hallway. At first I thought it was my parents talking downstairs, but the voice was too close, and it wasn't a conversation. It was someone calling our names. Emma, Lucas. It was a woman's voice, soft and slow, almost sing-song, but just off, like she was trying to sound comforting and completely failing. I sat up in bed, and Emma was already awake, staring at the bedroom door. "Did you hear that?" she whispered again. I nodded, but I couldn't bring myself to move. The voice called our names again, a little louder, a little more insistent. That was when Emma got out of bed. I tried to grab her arm to stop her, but she was already halfway across the room. She opened the bedroom door and looked out into the dark hallway. There was no one there. She turned to me and said, "It's coming from the guest room." I told her not to go in there, but she didn't listen. She stepped into the hallway, and I had no choice but to follow her. The door to the guest room was open just a crack. We never left it open. Our parents always kept it shut, because the room got cold at night. But now it was open, and the whispering was louder. "Emma, Lucas." Emma pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty, dark, except for a sliver of moonlight coming through the curtains. We stood there, not breathing, waiting for something to move, for someone to reveal themselves, but nothing did. Then the door slammed shut behind us. We screamed. I don't even remember grabbing Emma's hand, but I must have, because the next thing I knew, we were racing down the stairs and into our parents' room. They were already awake, confused, asking what was wrong. We told them everything. The scratching, the whispering, the voice in the guest room. They told us it was a dream, that we had scared each other awake, that we needed to stop watching scary movies and reading ghost stories before bed. We begged them to come upstairs. They did. They checked under the bed, the closet, the hallway, and the guest room. Of course, everything looked normal, but we knew it wasn't. That night, we slept on the floor, in our parents' room, and for the next week, we refused to go upstairs alone. Eventually, things calmed down. We stopped hearing the whispering. We convinced ourselves it was all in our heads, just like our parents said. But then one night, our dad came upstairs to check on us. He found Emma sitting in the hallway, just outside the guest room door. Her eyes were open, but she wasn't responding, just staring at the door, expressionless. He said her lips were moving, but he couldn't hear what she was saying. When he finally got her to snap out of it, she had no memory of getting out of bed or sitting in the hallway. She started crying, saying something was trying to talk to her in her dreams, that it told her to come to the guest room, that it said it missed her. My parents took it seriously after that. They called our pastor, had him bless the house. I remember the way he paused at the top of the stairs, just outside the guest room, like he felt something, but he never said what. Things stopped after that. No more whispering, no more strange dreams. Emma and I eventually went back to sleeping in our room, but the guest room stayed locked. Even years later, after we moved out, my parents kept it shut tight. They turned it into storage, stuffed it with boxes, sealed the window shut. They never talked about it again, but I still think about it. A few years ago, I visited my parents with my wife and kids. We stayed for the weekend, and my daughter, who was about 6 at the time, asked if she could play upstairs. I said sure, just stay out of the guest room. She tilted her head and asked, "The one with the lady whispering?" My stomach dropped. I asked her what she meant, and she just shrugged. "The lady in the hallway. She said she used to live here. She wanted to know if we missed her." That night, I didn't sleep. I still don't know what we experienced back then, whether it was something tied to the house or something else entirely, but I know it was real. I felt it. We heard it. And now my daughter has too. Some things stay with places. They linger, waiting for someone to notice them, or worse, acknowledge them. All I know is, if you ever wake up to someone whispering your name in the middle of the night, don't follow the sound, because it's probably not who you think it is. And some doors, once opened, never really close again. When I was in 7th grade, my family moved into a small one-story house on the edge of a wooded area in Pennsylvania. It wasn't remote. We still had neighbors on either side, but directly behind us was a dense patch of forest that stretched for miles. The backyard led right up to the trees, and in the fall, the wind would rustle the branches so loud it sounded like whispers at night. My parents were thrilled with the house. It was older but well kept, with creaky hardwood floors and a layout that felt cozy. I shared a room with my younger brother Nate, who was 9 at the time. He was always a little more sensitive than me, quiet, easily startled, prone to nightmares, but we were close. When he got scared, I'd let him crawl into my bed, and he'd be out within minutes. The first time something strange happened, I wrote it off as a weird dream. It was around 3 a.m., and I was sleeping soundly when I heard someone whisper my name. Just once, a sharp little breath of a whisper, like it was pressed right up against my ear. I sat up immediately, expecting to see Nate standing beside my bed, like he often did. But the room was empty. He was asleep in his bed, his chest rising and falling. I even got up to check on him. He didn't stir. I figured maybe I dreamed the sound, or maybe it was a trick of the wind. Our windows were old and drafty, and the woods could get loud at night. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, the whisper came from the hallway outside our room, still soft, but clear. And it didn't just say my name. It said, "Come here." Not loud, not aggressive, just inviting. I sat frozen in bed, staring at the door. I don't know why, but my skin went cold all at once. I wanted to believe it was my mom or dad, maybe even Nate trying to mess with me, but I didn't move, and eventually, I guess I fell back asleep. Things escalated slowly. We'd hear knocks on the walls at night, always soft and irregular, like someone tapping with their knuckles. Nate started having trouble sleeping. He'd tell me he felt like someone was watching him from the corner of our room. I'd get up and look, even turn the light on, but there was never anything there. Then one night, I heard him talking to someone. It was maybe 2 or 3 in the morning, and I woke up to the sound of his voice, low, hushed, like he was trying not to wake me. I thought he was on the phone or something, which would have been weird since he didn't even have one. But when I rolled over, I saw him sitting up in bed, staring at the wall, just staring and whispering. I called out his name. He turned slowly toward me with this blank expression, like he wasn't really seeing me. Then he blinked, looked confused, and asked me what I said. I told him he was talking in his sleep, and he just said, "Oh," and laid back down. The next morning, I asked him what he remembered. He looked uncomfortable and said, "I thought you were talking to me." That was when I started to get really uneasy. I told my parents about the knocking, the whispers, Nate talking to the wall, but they brushed it off as imagination or bad dreams. My dad even blamed horror movies, which we weren't supposed to watch, but of course we snuck some in now and then. One night, I woke up again to whispering. This time, it was closer, right next to my bed, but it wasn't saying my name. It was Nate's voice, whispering, "Wake up, follow me, come on." I sat up fast and looked around. Nate was asleep in his bed, dead to the world. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Things got worse after that. Nate started sleepwalking. We'd find him in the hallway, or even in the living room. Once we found him standing by the back door, one hand on the knob. His eyes were open, but he didn't respond until Dad touched his shoulder, and he gasped, like he'd been underwater. My parents started locking the back door with the deadbolt and hiding the key. Still, we found him there again, sometimes muttering under his breath. One night, I was walking back from the bathroom when I heard movement outside. Our room faced the woods, and we had a small window that looked directly into the trees. I paused by the window and looked out. Something was standing just beyond the tree line. I couldn't see it clearly, just a shape, pale and narrow. It moved slowly, like it was swaying. Then it turned, and I saw eyes, reflecting the moonlight. 2 round, bright eyes. I ran back to bed, and didn't say a word. A few nights later, it spoke to me again, but this time it didn't whisper. It called my name in Nate's voice, clear and loud from outside the window. "Chris, come outside. I need your help." I sat in bed holding my breath. My heart was racing. I looked over. Nate was in bed, still asleep. "Please, it's me. Come help me." There was no mistaking it. It was Nate's voice, but flat, off somehow, like it was copying him but didn't understand tone or inflection. I didn't move. Then I heard something scrape against a wall beneath the window, a slow dragging sound, like claws. The next morning, I told my mom everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she told me something that made my stomach drop. She said when she was a little girl, Her brother used to sleepwalk and talk in his sleep too. One night, he walked right out the front door and into the woods. They found him the next morning, standing in a clearing, barefoot and shivering. He had no memory of how he got there. He said something told him to follow it. She never talked about it again. That same day, my parents arranged for us to stay with my aunt and uncle for a few weeks. When we got back, Dad had trimmed the trees at the edge of the yard and installed motion lights, but it didn't really matter. The feeling was still there, watching, waiting. We moved out a year later. Nate doesn't remember most of what happened, but sometimes, late at night, he'll text me and ask, "Do you ever think about that house?" And every now and then I'll wake up and think I hear his voice, whispering from the hallway. I was 17 when it happened, the summer before my senior year of high school. My parents had just finalized their divorce, and I'd moved with my mom into a small rental house on the edge of town. It was an older place, creaky floors, drafty windows, one of those homes that always felt a few degrees colder than it should be. Mom worked long shifts at the hospital, usually overnight, so I was home alone most nights. I didn't mind at first. I liked the quiet. I thought I was mature enough to handle it. It started small, and I almost didn't notice it at first. One night, I came home from my friend Jamie's house. It was around 10 p.m. The neighborhood was dark and mostly quiet. I remember the porch light was out, which was odd because I always made sure to leave it on. But whatever, maybe the bulb had burned out. I unlocked the door and went in. Nothing seemed out of place, but I had this prickly feeling, like someone had been there before me. A couple days later, I found something strange in the backyard. We had this rickety wooden fence that bordered a stretch of woods. Just beyond the fence, pressed into the mud, were what looked like boot prints. Large ones. They faced toward the house. I don't know how long they'd been there, but the ground was still a little wet from recent rain, so they couldn't have been that old. I showed them to Mom when she got home that morning, but she just shrugged. "Probably a hiker," she said. "Those woods aren't private." But they weren't near the trail. They were right up against the fence, right where someone would stand if they were trying to watch the house. I tried to forget about it. I told myself I was being paranoid. The neighborhood was safe, the kind of place where people still left their doors unlocked during the day. But that uneasy feeling never really left me. After that, a week or so later, I started noticing weird things happening at night. I'd hear footsteps on the porch, not quick ones, slow, deliberate steps. Once I heard a doorknob rattle. I froze in my bed, listening. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then nothing. I told Mom again, and again she brushed it off. "Old houses make noise," she said. "You probably heard the wind." I started sleeping with a bat next to my bed. I'd lock every window and door before nightfall. I even put a chair under my bedroom doorknob, just in case. I didn't sleep much. Then came the phone calls. We didn't have a landline, just our cell phones. I got the first call around 2 a.m. It was a blocked number. I didn't answer. A minute later, it rang again. Same blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then a third time. I picked up that time, mostly out of frustration. At first, there was silence. Then breathing, low, ragged breathing, like someone had just run a mile. I hung up immediately. My hands were shaking. The next night, it happened again. Then again, the night after that, I started turning my phone off at night. But it didn't stop. One night, I was walking home from Jamie's house again. Same route, same time. About halfway home, I noticed a car behind me. Not close, not doing anything unusual, just there. I crossed to the other side of the street. The car did too. I walked faster, so did it. There was a convenience store about 2 blocks from my house. I cut through a side yard and ran for it, trying not to make it obvious. I got inside and pretended to browse the snacks, heart pounding. The car cruised past slowly. I could only see the outline of the driver. Male, I think. No lights on inside the car. I waited 10 minutes before I dared walk home. The next day, I found something on our porch, a single cigarette, still warm, like someone had been standing there smoking just minutes before I stepped outside. We didn't smoke. None of our neighbors smoked, at least not that I'd ever seen. I started to think I was losing my mind. Nobody believed me. Not my mom, not Jamie, not even the police when I finally got desperate enough to file a report. There was no evidence, they said. No camera footage, no witnesses, nothing stolen or broken. Maybe it's just a prank, the officer said. Neighborhood kids, it wasn't a prank. One night, I was in bed, scrolling on my phone with the TV on low. That's when I heard it. Something scraped against the window. Not the screen, the glass. I froze. My room was on the first floor, facing the backyard. I turned the TV off and sat up. There it was again, a long, slow scrape. I crawled out of bed, heart in my throat. I crept toward the window and pulled the curtain back just an inch. There was a man standing there. He was tall, wearing a hoodie pulled low over his face. His mouth was twisted into this grotesque smile, lips cracked, eyes wide, and staring right at me through the glass. He didn't flinch when I saw him. He wanted me to see him. I screamed and backed away. By the time I ran to the front door and out onto the porch, he was gone. Vanished into the woods. That night, Mom finally believed me. We called the police again. This time, they took it more seriously. They found footprints under the window, the same size as before. They even put a patrol car outside our house for a few nights. But after a week with no new sightings, they pulled back. I didn't sleep at all. After that, every creak, every shadow outside, made me jump. I started keeping a knife under my pillow. I even begged my mom to let us move. Then one night, he came back. It was around 3 a.m. I heard the front door creak open. I knew I'd locked it. I grabbed the bat and crept out of my room. The house was pitch black, except for a faint light coming from the kitchen. The refrigerator door was open. Someone was in there. I could hear him breathing, shuffling. I nearly screamed when I saw him. He was standing there in the kitchen, facing away from me, just standing, like he belonged there, like he was looking for something. I didn't wait. I screamed and charged at him with the bat. He turned just as I swung. I missed his head, hit his shoulder. He grunted, then ran, bolted out the front door and into the woods. This time, the cops found more. Fingerprints on the fridge, scuff marks on the door frame. But he was gone, totally vanished. We moved 2 weeks later, stayed with my aunt in a different city. My mom broke the lease, and she didn't care about the deposit. I was too scared to even go back for my things. The police never found him. Sometimes I still think I see him. Parked cars with someone sitting too still, strangers who stare too long. I don't answer block calls anymore. I haven't slept with the lights off since that summer. I keep a knife in my nightstand and a camera above my front door because I know he's still out there, watching, waiting, and if he found me once, he could do it again.